I'm Dr. Joseph Dorsey. I'm on the faculty at the Patel College of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. I wear many hats, so one of the things that I do is I oversee our academic capstone program, which involves internships and research projects. I also direct our food, sustainability, and security concentration, as well as being the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. My role here has been one of working with our students. We're a graduate program. We offer a master's degree in global sustainability. We have master's in arts and master in science. We have 9 concentrations, which involve food, water, energy, as well as climate change, business, and transportation, among things like that. Well, I'm originally from Washington, D.C. That's where I grew up. I went to Howard University from undergraduate, majored in human nutrition and food. Right out of college, I went into the Peace Corps, and I did 2 years in the Ivory Coast, West Africa, working with malnourished children and their families. I got a chance to travel throughout West Africa, as well as seeing parts of Europe. When I got back to the States, I looked for employment, obviously, and I found out about a position down in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Croix with the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children. And so I also did a couple of years in Washington, D.C., working as a clinical nutritionist looking at pregnancy outcomes. So 10 years of my career were basically working in health and nutrition and maternal and child care. And so as I was working on my master's degree in international development, I became aware of a program in the University of Michigan in their School of Natural Resources and Environment. And I went into that program as a doctoral student and completed it in around 1999. I did my research in Flint, Michigan, looking at the dynamics between, it was a waste to energy facility that was being sited in the Flint area. And so I looked at the dynamic between the government, industry, and the community as far as making that decision of where to site it and to start that operation. So that started me thinking more about community-based activities. My dissertation work looked specifically at community-based activism, and I used the frame of environmental justice to look at this dynamic between government, industry, and community. Well, that's definitely a big topic. Climate change, something that it's definitely here. It's not so much about is it happening. It's like, what's the intensity? What's the duration? How long is these things going to happen? But what climate change is basically about unpredictability. We talk about the idea of global warming, that the planet, like I said, after the glacial period, the planet started warming naturally. And some people say, yeah, it's warming up, and that's where we were able to grow, crops for over 10,000 years. But the Industrial Revolution has created machines and things that we can now, the technologies that we have created have enhanced our abilities to cut down more forests, to clear more land, to extract more from the earth, more fishing. So the things that we can't do as an individual human body are now enhanced by our technologies. So it multiplies our effect to do things, but it also multiplies our ability to exploit. And so as we're thinking about the climate, the carbon dioxide that's being released is being, I guess the word is called sequestered by the trees and by the oceans that kind of draw it back in. But if we're putting more into the atmosphere than the Earth can absorb, then a lot of that is lingering. And so they talk about this thing called the greenhouse effect, where it's, or being in a car, like all of us know what it's like to sit in a car with the windows up in the summertime and how quickly it gets warm because the heat can't escape fast enough. And so the greenhouse gases kind of hold that heat on the planet longer, and so the planet starts to warm. And and it's warming anyway, so we're sort of accelerating that warming. And there are parts of the planet that are cold, but things that are cold, like ice, can be affected by warming. So if the polar caps feel that warming, they start to melt. And we all know what happens to water when ice turns to water. It starts to expand. So it raises the seas, and then we have coastlines, and then so the water comes into the coastline. and it affects where people live. But the other thing about climate change is the unpredictability. And so the thing about the 10,000 years of agrarian history is that it's been pretty stable for that 10,000 years. If you're growing crops, well, you really basically need just a couple of things. You need soil, you need rain, you need sunlight, and pretty much consistent seasons. So when the bees come at a certain time, things flower. There's a certain predictability. But when you don't have that with climate change, because the Earth is a self-regulating organism, when it gets too warm one place, it tries to overcompensate by cooling somewhere else. So what we see on the Earth is a lot of pendulum swings. As it gets one extreme here, the Earth is trying to adjust itself. So it may be really cold this year, but next year it gets really hot. And it's trying to find that balance. And that's what climate change is that constant trying to find the balance around the world of moisture, of heat, of cold, all those type of things. Now getting back to, growing plants, if they don't know when they're going to get any water, or, then you'll have drought. Or if you get too much water, then you end up having flooding. All that's affecting the soil, affecting the seasons. And so we now put ourselves in jeopardy because we're trying to grow crops outside when we're not quite sure what's going to happen as far as rain. Or we got to put a whole lot of petroleum into the soil for nutrients. We have to worry about pests. The warmer it gets, tropical pests and disease start migrating from the south to the north because of the change in temperature. So we end up getting, invasive species that normally in the southern hemisphere are now migrating to the northern hemisphere, eating our crops. So there's a lot of problems, and that's why as we talk a little further about urban agriculture, some of the ideas that have come about are vertical farming, hydroponics, aquaponics, controlled environments where we're now sort of controlling the temperature, we're controlling the moisture and the lighting, and keeping pests out and so forth and so on. So I think that's the future, that we have to look at what future we've created as far as growing crops traditionally in the age of climate change, opposed to having the technologies we need to find alternative ways of growing food. I have to be optimistic about the future, because otherwise we just might as well just give up. And so you can't give up, because there's always opportunity to do better. And so using my own life as an example, and not giving up, and always feeling we can find another way, a better way, and teaching people to do that, I think is the key to keeping that optimistic future in our lenses.